Jade plant propagation. 3 methods. I acquired my first jade plant 2 years ago when I bought this as a tiny 2-inch stem cutting for £2 whilst raising money for charity by doing a plant sale. A colleague had donated some plants for the cause, and this jade was so interesting to me that I bought it for myself. Since then, I've tended to it carefully, keeping it on my bathroom windowsill. It wasn't long before I started experimenting with propagating it. This is a video of my experience. Before we get into the propagation methods, let's take a quick look at this fascinating plant. The common names for this plant is jade, money plant, and lucky plant. The proper name for it is Crassula ovata. Jade is a succulent plant, which means it stores moisture in its stems and leaves for long periods of time so that it can survive drought conditions. Originating from South Africa, it has become a common houseplant due to it requiring so little maintenance to survive. The striking feature of jade plants are the thick green leaves, as well as their colour, their shape and size, and how they develop over time is interesting. Jade plants provide interesting greenery to any home and last a very long time without leaving much decaying mess, unlike many other houseplants. Jade plants do not require direct sunlight and are quite happy in rooms with north-facing windows. Too much sun will make the leaves change colour to yellow and red. I've not had this happen with my jade plants, but that's because I've not had them in full sun locations. Soil requirements for jade are usually a well-draining kind. However, I've grown my jade in bog standard garden soil and it has done just fine. In my newer jade propagations, I've used peat and that has been perfectly adequate. I've not used any kind of potting mix involving perlite or grit and simply water once a week or once every 2 weeks, so preparing a growing medium for jade propagation need not cost any money or special effort to make an elaborate mix. Moving on now to my 3 methods for propagating jade plants. I've been doing these since I got my first jade plant a couple of years ago, so my experience is first-hand and is in the context of the relatively cold climate of North London in England, and it is somewhat dependent on which part of the year you do this as to how fast the process works. I approach all propagation attempts from a perspective of abundance, that is, do many, and if any work, you've succeeded, and if none work, you haven't lost anything by trying, and you may learn something for when you next try. Stem cuttings allow you to propagate jade plants to make large clones of the parent donor in a short amount of time. When you have a natural division in the stem, once you get to 4 or 5 nodes of leaves worth of growth on the secondary branch, you can cut it off to make a new jade plant. In this example, the secondary branch can be easily identified as it is smaller than the primary branch and has a smaller diameter. It also comes out at a 45-degree angle relative to the primary branch and a leaf, much like sucker branches in tomato plants. This branch currently has only 3 nodes or pairs of leaves. It is possible to cut this off at this stage to make a new jade, but I'm going to wait until it has another 2 pairs of matured leaves before I cut this off. When I do cut it off, I will remove the bottom 2 pairs of leaves, let them callus for a couple of days, and then pop this into soil with both nodes buried. I use 2 nodes in the soil as this doubles the chances of it rooting and making for a stronger new plant. This particular jade plant in this green pot was the first stem cutting propagation I made just under a year ago from the parent. The cut from which it was made is shown here. If I remember correctly, it had about 7 nodes on it when I made the cutting. You can also see here how the original cut healed up and has become a feature of the parent plant. This newer stem cutting has been growing for about 6 months and is itself now producing a new stem division at the top here. In a few months' time, this will also have grown sufficiently for a further cutting to be taken from it. Similar to method 1, beheading means cutting the main stem to make a new jade plant. Working on the principle of 7 or 8 nodes and putting the bottom 3 to 4 nodes in the soil and leaving 3 to 4 sets of leaves on top, this quickly gives you a new jade plant. After removing the bottom leaves, these can be set aside for further use. Jade plants can also be propagated easily from leaf cuttings, though this is a much slower process and has a lower success rate. You can pull the leaves off carefully with your fingers. Some people like to cut the leaves off with scissors. Once you have your leaves, you can place them straight into soil, lightly covered by a couple of millimeters. Some people like to leave them out in the open air for 3 to 5 days to dry and callus over before placing them in the soil. I don't think this makes much difference. Some people like to activate root growth by applying spit to the callus wound. I don't think this makes much difference either. If you place them wound first straight into a shallow soil covering and you don't water for a week, you'll get the same result. When the process fails, the leaf gives up all its moisture and shrivels up before any roots and leaves appear. However, when it is successful, the leaf retains its moisture for several months, and this feeds the growth of new roots and leaves until the new plant is established. Here, this leaf cutting was started over late autumn, has taken 6 months to root and for leaves to emerge. I barely watered this, and it still succeeded over a very cold winter. The donor leaf is still looking very healthy. In this pot, which was started at the same time as the one we've just seen, 3 leaves were placed, 2 of which have succeeded, and the third has rooted but was planted just too deep to leaf. The donor leaves are looking healthy, and the new growth seems to be a little further on than the first example we saw. But again, this is about 6 months of growth over the winter months. In this pot, which is about 10 months of growth, 2 stems are emerging and the leaf pairs are recognisable. The donor leaf has finally succumbed and can be seen dying back. When I pull the pot from the ceramic, we can see this long root coming out of the bottom of the pot. In this last blue ceramic, there are a further 2 plants emerging. Again, roughly 10 months old. It's really interesting to watch these as they have progressed from virtually nothing into bright leafy plants. So just from one jade plant, I now have all of these and a lot more to come. I'm really looking forward to watching these continue to grow and branch out, and for the central stems to thicken out. I've seen some videos on YouTube where jade plants have been used for bonsai, and I think this is a good way to give good shape and form to a jade. I hope you found this video interesting. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.